Recording.
Call the Willmar City Council meeting for Monday, November 21st to order. Roll call.
Mayor Calvin.
Here.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Here.
Osmus. Here. Butterfield.
Here.
O'Brien. Osk.
Here.
Davis.
Here.
Plowman.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
8 present, 1 absent.
O'Brien has an excused absence. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any proposed additions or deletions to the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Consent items, Ms. Thompson.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, on tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval the city council minutes of November 7th, Willmar Municipal Utilities Board minutes of November 14th, Convention and Visitor Bureau minutes of October 18th, City Council work session minutes of November 1st, City Board of Canvass proceedings of November 16th, accounts payable report for November 3rd through November 16th, Civic Center Arena special event by on-sale liquor license holder permit for Minnesota Turkey Growers Association, and a resolution for the consideration of deferred special assessments for senior citizens, disabled, or active military. For council's information, the building report for October of 2022.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
Osk.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Plowman.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Council, I need to back up just a step. I was supposed to mention that council will have a special meeting next Tuesday, 7 p.m. at the Municipal Utilities Auditorium to hear an update on City Hall and the Community Center from our consultants. So if we can add that at this point.
We need a motion for that?
Do we do a motion on that? We don't. We just advise, right?
I don't think we need a motion on it.
Right. I should have added it to the agenda. I didn't do that, so. Okay, open forum. Anybody for open forum?
No, we have no one signed.
Okay, public hearing. Open the public hearing to consider an ordinance amending water rates charged by Willmar Municipal Utilities and call on Commission Chair, Commission Director, Commission Boss guy, John Herron. Mr. Herron. And the public hearing is open.
Thank you, Mayor Calvin. Thank you to the council for giving consideration to the request of the Utility Commission to amend sections 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of ordinance 1442 relating to our water rate charges. The ordinance that's presented before you tonight in summary is a 4-year ordinance with 2023 being proposed at 20%, 2024 being proposed at a 5%, 2024, back up. Third increase would be 4%, and a fourth increase, which would be in 2026, would be 3%. How does that equate to a residential bill? Average residential customer has a consumption of 720 cubic feet approximately. Today, their current bill is $3.91 for that volume. After the increases over the 4 years, their bill would go up to $4.13, or an average of $2.81 per year on average. What does that generate the utility for increased revenue? The 20% the first year will generate us roughly $800,000 in additional revenue. Where will those dollars be expended? Out of those dollars, out of the 800, about 400,000 has been added to our water main replacement program that will coincide with the street replacement program, so we can replace the water mains in conjunction with the streets. The other 400 will go towards the water treatment plant as well as O&M costs for the utility. So why the 20% the first year instead of dividing it up over the 4 years? When we look at funding of our projects and cash flow, we need the 20% up front to cash flow the projects to keep our overall increases at a minimal. When we're looking at funding our projects, we looked at many different scenarios. With the most expensive scenario will be fully bonding of the project, which then based on a rate study, the rates would have needed to be 20, 20, 20, and 5. So where we're at today as a commission, we feel good that we were able to reduce the rate increases. At the same time, nobody likes rate increases, so we're very sensitive to that. But when we look at where we're at, we feel that we are in a good place, that overall our increases are moderate. And when we look at where we compare with other communities, this results are put together by AE2S. It's a consulting firm. They put this study together annually, and some of the cities that are in here is like Worthington, Alexandria, Big Lake, Hutchinson, St. Cloud, New Ulm, Moorhead, Marshall are in here, and you can see we're kind of right in the middle with our rates where we are today. And with our increases as we go forward here, we anticipate that we'll stay roughly in the middle of the communities that are taking part of this survey. So with that said, I'm sure I missed some questions that you might have, but I am more than open to answer questions.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and the general manager for the utilities has concluded his introductory comments. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Again, anybody from the public that wishes to speak? Anybody from the public that wishes to speak on the rate increase recommendation from the municipal utilities to the council and amending the ordinance? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it to the council. Council, what are your wishes?
Make a motion to adopt, assign a number, and publish.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion.
I got a question. So in here, it says you're going to modify the summer rate classification by adding 1 month.
Correct.
So can you explain that?
For water conservation, DNR requires us to have a water conservation plan in place. The summer rates, when you talk about modifying it by 1 month, we are going to start, if you got the data there, what are we proposing to start in May, I believe it is? Yeah. Happens this setting starting in June, there's a lot of lawn watering, a lot of irrigation stuff that takes place in May already. So that has been moved back from June, or May, June, from June to May. So it'd be one month when it's, one more month in the year when the summer rates will be applied.
Okay, does that include sewer?
No. Sewer, on the residential side, how sewer works, it's a winter 4-month average. So lawn watering on the residential customers does not affect their wastewater charges. Okay. That's based on their winter average. And on the commercial, not all, but a lot of commercial customers that do lawn watering, they have a separate meter. So again, that doesn't affect their wastewater charges.
Okay.
Oh, good question.
Thank you.
Just for comments or questions, Councilman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you explain, I liked the chart you referenced earlier with all the different cities that are taking part in that survey. Can you explain, there's really big differences in cost in some of these communities. What causes like a Rochester to get away with $17? What, why is Redwood Falls at, 66?
Sure. Excellent question again. A lot of things go into cost, as you alluded to. As an example, I'll bring it back to Willmar here. We have a chloride challenge in front of us on the wastewater side on a discharge. If we were to address that today, well, let me back up. based on costs about 4 or 5 years ago, when we were wrapping up our design costs for the water treatment plant and trying to determine a path forward, to build a water treatment plant to address the chloride limits, which is salt that's coming from the water softeners. Back then, the estimated price tag for that was $100 million. So you can imagine where our rates would go. On the survey, a lot of differences could be in the treatment type. If you have a softening plant in town, you're definitely going to have a lot higher O&M costs as well as in the cost of your plant. So a lot has to do with the types of treatment the different cities have and where their water comes from. As you start going south a little bit, I think I mentioned Marshall was on. Yeah, Marshall's on here. Marshall's towards the bottom end. They put in a couple new wells a couple years ago. They ended up going miles out of town to get water. So, that cost is going to drive up rates. So many different factors contribute to a community's rates.
Okay. So the context at each of these communities is very different.
Very, yeah.
Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? I have a couple of questions. I've noticed you started your work on your water treatment facility on the north side.
Yep.
And I know that you're funding that internally, and that was one of the factors of driving down the costs. Can you explain to us a little bit how you, what analytics you use to come to that analysis that that's what you should do?
Excellent question. When we, long story, when we completed design of our water treatment plant, when I say completed, 90% factor is where we're at about 5 years ago with our plant. And at that time, we reached out to the different state agencies to try and acquire low interest loans, grant dollars. Unsuccessfully, all our local programs require us to meet our salty discharge limitations at the wastewater treatment plant in order to qualify for grants and loans. So from there, we focused our efforts onto the bonding, both at bonding bills, both at the federal bondings at state level, appropriations at the federal level. Focused our interest there to try and acquire some of those dollars. Again, we were unsuccessful. Last year, again, at the federal level, we were unsuccessful. At the state level, we all know how that session turned out. So we moved forward last fall with our rate study, assuming the highest price scenario, which is fully funding. Reaching out with bond consultants or fiscal consultants, looking at options that we had and plugging full bonding costs into our rate studies. That's where we needed the 20%, 20%, 20%, and 5%. As we started looking at options to our project, we looked at what can we do to bring our project costs down. And one factor that we were able to bring our project costs down was how we had the project cost, or how we had our project put together. Our project was put together with the anticipation that we were going to receive low interest loans, through PFA, agencies like that, as well as grant dollars and or state bonding dollars or federal appropriation dollars. You are required through all those programs to have to meet a lot of additional criteria like the Bacon-Davis Wage Act, Build America, Buy America, American Steel Act, all those. That was adding, based on our engineer's estimate, somewhere north of $2 million to our project. So we pulled all that out of our project as we went to bid here this spring. Our project came in, engineer's estimate was $22 million. Our project estimate came in when we opened bids at 16.7, I think, is just shy of $17 million. So from what we were looking at in our budgets to where the project came in, that was about $4 million under what we were anticipating and what we were looking at and utilized for dollars in our rate study. So then we went back to the financial side and said, what does that mean for rate reductions? I believe those rates came in then at 20%, 15%, and 7 and 4, 7 and 5, something like that. Those rates came in. Commission looked at it again and said, is there any other alternatives or possibilities that we can utilize or look at in financing this project to manage our rates? And that's where we are at today. We're looking at funding that project in-house between the dollars that we have in the water fund and at this point borrowing from the electric fund. And I say that's where we are today. I might be back in front of the council in a couple months asking for a small bond because we're looking at, which just came up in the last month, an opportunity to install additional generation. And if we move forward with $10, $12 million worth of additional generation, we need to sell some bonds and to cash flow the operation. So we went from 2020 and 5 to where we are today, basically funding in-house to the extent that we can, which gives us the opportunity to bring our rates to what we're proposing or what the commission is proposing the council give consideration to here tonight.
Okay. I knew that you guys had done a lot of work around that because you and I have had numerous conversations in regards to that. So thank you for that update to the council as far as what you did there.
Thank you for the question.
And then, the wage issue, what's it called, Bacon?
Yeah.
Davis Bacon.
Yeah. Thank
you. I've been working with our representative and senator trying to still get us some bonding dollars for this project. And I know you and I have had numerous conversations in regards to this. If we get those bonding dollars, generally Bacon Davis has to be paid then. Is there, and I've talked to both Dave and Andrew and told them, because you didn't give us the money on the front side, we're going ahead and doing what we need to do, to get this project done, but we still need this help. So if we get these dollars, I don't want this just ending up being that we end up getting, $4 to $5 to $6 million and then having to pay the $4 to $5 to $6 million under government welfare, if you want to call it that. So, should I quit asking?
No, absolutely not. I appreciate you asking. I actually have a meeting set up with Representative Baker, Senator Lang, hopefully Representative Erdahl. He hasn't committed yet, but we're hoping to have a meeting on December 21st to talk about the bonding bill and the current bonding on the House and Senate side and what that means. I spoke with Representative Baker, had a similar conversation as Mayor Kelvin has with them, and what that means, and that if we, only get $2-3 million out of the bonding bill, we're probably going to have to turn it down because of the strings attached to it. That we need something by far more than $2-3 million. Also, in the past, there's been a precedent set that when projects have been funded after they're started, they've been given waivers to the criteria that we normally would have to comply with. Representative Baker is well aware of that. I've had a conversation with him once already since re-election, since we move forward with our project. And we'll pick that discussion up here on December 21st and make sure that they're well aware of the criteria that typically goes with those dollars and the need to have exemption from the criteria that's typically associated with that. So with that said, hopefully we still can land somewhere in the vicinity of around $8 to $10 million without any strings attached to it. But it's a long shot at this point in time. We've been trying to get dollars for the last 4 to 5 years, both at federal, state level, unsuccessfully. Here we are today. We need to move forward. We're short of capacity at our plants to meet the needs of the community. So we're moving forward, and we'll see where discussion goes. But by all means, the mayor, council members, as you have conversations with our legislative delegation, do not hesitate to push the issue. We can use the money out here. They're sitting on what, latest estimate, $12 billion down there. Let's get some of that money out here in greater Minnesota and not keep it all down in the cities. So anything you can do to help it along, we greatly appreciate. So will the community.
Okay. And so then the coffee shop talk, and you know how the coffee shop talk goes, maybe there's a piece of truth to it. But the coffee shop talk is that we should have been in front of the legislators earlier asking for these dollars. And you and I have had this conversation as well. So we've been in front of them for the last 4 to 5 years, as you stated earlier. So we hired a lobbyist this last year just simply to help us, but we were in front of them way long before that, correct?
That would be correct. We have been. And unsuccessful, and being that we were unsuccessful in prior years, that's absolutely a correct statement. We hired a lobbyist. We spent a bunch of money on lobbyists this last year. In fact, 2 of them, plus 1 in DC. We hired 3 lobbyists this last year to help us land some dollars unsuccessfully. So.
And so I'll just offer, if you need me at that meeting on the 21st, I'd be more than happy to be there. I know Mayor-elect Reese is here as well, and I'm sure that he'd be willing to help in any way that you'd need him as well. So
Perfect,
if you need us,
appreciate that. I'll send you both a calendar invite for that meeting. It's going to be over at the Perkins Restaurant at 9:30.
Is there food?
There'll be food.
I'll be there. Okay. So we have a motion that's been made and seconded. Additional comments or questions from council? Councilmember Butterfield.
If our projection comes in over the 800,000 you're looking at, where's that money gonna go to then?
Could you repeat the question, please?
You know, you stated that you're looking at $800,000 is
Okay.
what this increase is looking at bringing in. Say if we bring in $875,000, where's that other $75,000 gonna go?
Those additional dollars, when I say 800,000, if commodity sales in the past reflect the future, which we know they never do, we should end up somewhere between 8 and 850. Those excess dollars will go towards future capital projects and O&M expenses.
Will we get tied in the water main or what future projects, you know, because this could be, you know, street projects are a big concern of mine and the rest of the city of Willmar.
Oh.
You know, we're gonna have any extra, that's where I would like to see this money going.
Yeah. But when we put budgets together, I'm sure our budget process is similar to the cities. We put together a capital project. We got a 10-year capital project that we put together. We add the O&M to it. We look at what kind of cash flow we have, what kind of cash flow our needs are. So anything that would be in excess of $800,000 would help offset future rate increases because that money would continue to go towards our escalating O&M costs as well as our capital costs that we need. If that answers your question. There's probably another question that hasn't been asked, but I'll address that because tomorrow when you're thinking about our conversation, you'll probably ask yourself, what's going to happen if we do get $8-10 million of bonding dollars and we set the rates? What will happen? At the utility level, we will take another look at that. In the past, we have not always increased our rates based on what the ordinance allowed us to. So that would be the same scenario here. If we are successful at landing some bonding dollars, state bonding dollars, we would take a step back and look at the rates. By ordinance, we can increase them up to what's approved, but we can do something less if, you know, if
That's the maximum you can do.
yeah, if needed to be, so.
Additional comments or questions? Is everybody in agreement with the recommendation? And then at that point, then we'll take a roll call.
Councilmember Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Fagerly.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, happy Thanksgiving.
Mr. Heron, it's always, I always like asking you questions because you always have all the answers. And it really shows the value of the analytics that you're able to do when you're doing your budgeting in your forecasting. So that's really helpful, particularly for the council to hear how you do that. And so that we know that you take a very thorough look at it. So thank you for the work you do and happy Thanksgiving to you as well.
Thank you.
Next, we have a consideration of adopting a resolution receiving the 2023 improvement report and ordering the improvement hearing for December 19th. Our consulting engineer, Mr. Jared Vogie with Polton and Mink.
Evening, Mayor, Council. I do have a presentation here for you this evening. As the mayor indicated, the resolution before you this evening is to consider calling for a public hearing on the 2023 street improvement projects. Copy of the entire report was included in your packets this evening. This presentation will summarize it. I will mention up front that it is rather long, but I think it's important that we go through these items so that council has all the information necessary for this. This slide is a little difficult to read, but ultimately what I wanted to show council was the city project number and then the specific locations. It's going to be a lot easier to see on the next map, but ultimately wanted to list every single street associated with each individual project area, so that should you get any questions, you definitely have the project boundaries there available to you. So project area map, essentially this project as contemplated is divided into two primary categories, that being street reconstruction and then mill and overlay and parking lots and trails. The pink area identified on the map in front of you is the proposed reconstruction areas. That includes all the areas where the street and utilities would be replaced as part of it. The blue area has been identified as mill and overlay improvements. That's removing the top layer of bituminous and replacing it. The orange areas, and we'll get into each of these in more depth, but the orange areas are the parking lots that are being contemplated for improvement. The red is trails, and then the green, because it's in that 23rd area, there's been work done on there in the past, and I wanted to signify that those are the areas that have been worked on previously. Those are areas where maintenance would occur, and when I say maintenance, I'm talking about crack filling and seal coating. So I wanted to make sure that council had that information available. So ultimately, as each project area is evaluated, and similar to previous years, the project considerations that go into it are the sanitary sewer utility, the water main, the storm sewer, and then the street condition. So the existing areas within the reconstruction areas, the sanitary sewer, vast majority of it is clay and concrete pipe, and then brick or block and mortar manholes. As we've discussed in the past, those types of materials are prone to infiltration, and every bit of groundwater that gets into them is then required to be treated by the wastewater treatment facility. So it's definitely a cost item for the city, as well as those types of materials are prone to breaks and sags, and that's when we get backups, and we definitely don't want to have those. So water main, there are a variety of materials in this project area, but one of them is asbestos cement pipe. That's not identified to get anybody worried. It's been in service for a long time, but that is a material that is very prone to breaks, can become brittle over time. And in partnership with Willmar Municipal Utilities staff, we have identified those areas within the project that do contain that type of pipe. And again, cast iron pipe, also prone to breaks. Storm sewer, again, similar materials to the sanitary sewer, clay and concrete pipe. That's a common material that was used many years ago. Fortunately, those materials have improved over the years. And then streets, I think council is aware of the significant cracking and potholes and things of that nature within these streets that we've identified for this year. The street improvements, maybe get in a little bit more detail on there. As I mentioned, in the reconstruction areas, the entire pavement section would be rehabilitated, so it'd be removed. and replaced with gravel and new bituminous curb and gutter. And then what we've identified here is that all sidewalks that are currently in place will be replaced. And then we have identified a couple areas that we'll get into where we recommend that sidewalk connections be made based on other city plans and pedestrian routes. Overlay areas, that replacement is basically just that upper layer of pavement. It's ground off, repaved, and then full depth reclamation and overlay. That's a little more involved than a mill and overlay, but less involved in a street reconstruction. We do have a couple streets in that 23rd area that are not at the level they need a full reconstruct, primarily because the utilities beneath them are in good shape, but their aggregate base and their bituminous surfaces are definitely beyond a mill and overlay. And then in those areas, similar to the projects that have been done previously, any curb and gutter that's destroyed or not in good condition will be replaced before that final lift is put on. So very similar to the projects that you saw this year. So this is an existing street width map. I wanted to point this out. I know there were some questions on previous projects about existing street widths. So staff took a close look at those for this improvement, and we put together this map. Ultimately, what it shows in this same map is in the preliminary engineering report are the existing street widths. They range from 40 feet in width to 24 feet in width. As you can see, there's a lot of different colors next to each other, and it's kind of disjointed, if you will. So the next slide that I'll show you is the proposed street width map. And again, that ranges, the proposed street widths that we're talking about range in width from 40 feet to 26 feet. Now you'll recall the existing was, the smallest street width was 24. 24 feet is very difficult to maintain for public works staff. State aid standards, minimum street width is 26 when you have curb and gutter. So we've identified a 26 foot street in there. And then also a consistent street width throughout the project areas that better align with the street widths outside the project areas. So we're not going from a 40-foot street down to a 32, but maintaining a consistent street width. One item I will note on the east side, over by Irene and Augusta and Mary in that area, for whatever reason, the east side, the streets east of 9th were 40 feet in width, whereas the west side were, I believe existing was 20 or 32 feet. So we took a look at that and asked the question why, and we did not come up with a great reason why, but other than the fact that that's the way they were constructed. So we're proposing to keep them consistent on both sides of the street. Similarly, if you look at the Grace area, we are talking about proposing that street width at 36 feet. Currently, the existing street width varies from between 36 and 38, so we're proposing 36 there. And then finally, the other one that I did want to point out was on 20th Street. There is a cul-de-sac there, and if some of you have had the opportunity to drive up there, there's an island in the middle of it. We have had conversations with the property owners in that area. They're in support of removing that center median island. So that's what we would pursue further in design process should these projects move forward. That existing street width is also 36 feet. What we're proposing is 32. Ultimately, what we did as a staff was take a close look at these street widths. And we wanted to maintain mobility throughout these project areas, but we also recognize that each extra foot of pavement you have is an extra cost, not only to the project now and the assessments now, but also maintenance over time. So that is why we are suggesting what we are suggesting at this time. Also, an existing sidewalk and path location map. I think this is important based on some of the concerns that we had from residents in the past relative to sidewalk locations. So this is the sidewalk and trail system as it exists today. What we're proposing, and I can point out the areas. So within the Gorton Avenue project, we're proposing to extend that trail system out to the west where the existing county trail system exists, so that there's a good pedestrian connection there. The other area where sidewalk does not exist currently is in Grace Avenue. We're suggesting that sidewalk be added in that area to provide a connection between the streets in that area, because there's really, as we looked at it, there's sidewalks going north and south, but there's nothing leading through the neighborhood to connect those residents. And then finally, but another area that we're proposing sidewalk where it currently does not exist is Rice Avenue along the south side there. Currently, sidewalk exists for approximately one lot on the west side, but we're proposing to connect that over to the school as that seems to make sense from a school safety and pedestrian safety perspective. And then on the east side, around Augusta and Irene, we're proposing, those streets currently do not have sidewalk, and we're proposing sidewalk along the south side on Irene to connect to the park, and then along Augusta, because ultimately the city's long-term transportation plan would identify that as a through street, since neither Mary nor Irene connect further west. So those are the proposed changes to street widths and the proposed sidewalk additions currently contemplated in the report. And so the utility and drainage improvements, sanitary sewer is being proposed with new PVC pipe, 4-inch sewer services, and precast concrete manholes. Water main ranges in diameter from 8 inches to 12 inches with new hydrants, gate valves, and water services. And as I mentioned previously, we have reviewed those water main areas with John's staff over at the utility, and those collaborations have been going extremely well. So storm sewer is proposed to be replaced with new concrete pipe, new manholes, new castings, and then of course the curb and gutter is a component of that. Gorton Avenue sanitary sewer improvements, you'll notice 3 different colors on this sanitary sewer map. There's pink, and that's the area that runs south of Gorton around the cemetery and through backyards of homes. We are recommending in the report that sanitary sewer be televised to verify whether or not it needs to be removed. As you can imagine, working within the easements that sanitary sewer exists is adjacent to cemeteries, people's backyards, is a lot more sensitive than it would be to remove it and replace it in the street. So we're recommending that a televising be conducted to review that condition before making a determination whether or not it be replaced. The blue piping, or the lines identified on the screen, are utilities that were replaced in the not too distant past. There was a lift station project that was conducted over there a few years ago, probably 5 years ago, if I remember right. So we're not recommending that those pipes be replaced, but the green, similar to the other project areas that you'll see coming up here, green is proposed to be replaced. Water main improvements, ultimately the entire stretch along the Gorton Avenue project is proposed to be replaced with new water main hydrants and valves. Drainage improvements, there is some storm sewer that is proposed to be replaced as part of this project. One thing that I did want to mention, you'll notice there that the existing storm sewer, which is identified in light gray, near the West Central Steel West building, we're referring to it. There is a portion there that we believe to run under one of the buildings. So we're proposing that if we could alleviate some of the drainage that goes in that direction through the street, that would probably be advantageous to not only the city, but the property owner as well. The other thing I should note is, as you all are aware, Voss Park drainage improvements were one of those projects identified as part of the local option sales tax stormwater improvements. So we will be coordinating any improvements required in Gorton so that when that project moves forward, it'll be set up to accommodate that. So I wanted to make council aware of that. These are typical sections. I know you've seen them before. Ultimately, what they show are the proposed street widths and then the pavement sections. You'll notice here for Gorton Avenue west of 18th Street, that roadway is proposed to be 36 feet in width, but the section is a little thicker than some of the other typical sections that I'll be showing you here in a minute, with 6 inches of bituminous, 10 inches of aggregate base, 12 inches of select granular borrow. We have had conversations with West Central Steel. We have talked to them about the potential for a concrete roadway in front of their properties. They're open to that, so that is something that we'll definitely pursue during the design process. But currently, as it's shown in your report, is bituminous pavement section. Now, east of 18th Street, the proposed typical section, you'll note is 32 feet face to face, or ultimately what that means is 32 feet wide. That typical section is a little bit less, with 4.5 inches of bituminous rather than the 6th. 18th Street is also included in the project area. That typical section is similar to the Gorton section itself, but pavement designs are all based on traffic volumes and number of trucks, so that's why they vary a little bit. Ultimately, we want to make sure our pavement sections are strong enough to accommodate the traffic volumes that are on it. We don't want to overbuild because, as you know, that's additional cost to the project and future maintenance as well. And then in the Gorton Avenue area, 20th Street improvements, and that's the street that I spoke about earlier where that center island is proposed to be removed. 13th and Grace Avenue, 13th Street and Grace Avenue improvement area. This is just a figure of the sanitary sewer improvements. All the sanitary sewer within that project area are proposed to be replaced. Similarly with the water main improvements, new piping, valves, hydrants, and then the drainage improvements in that area. You'll note that some additional catch basins are being proposed at intersections to help reduce the standing water within the improvement area when there is a rain event. So that will help a couple runs of storm sewer to be added, but for the most part, replacement of the existing storm sewer within that project area. Typical section associated with 13th and Grace improvements. That typical section is more similar to the Gorton Avenue typical section east of 18th Street. 13th, 38 feet face to face. The 13th project recently completed, also had a street width of 38 feet. So again, trying to maintain consistency with the street widths. Grace Avenue, 36 feet face to face. Sanitary sewer improvements are identified there along Rice Avenue, essentially replacing what is in place. And now in this drawing, you'll also see a section of pink. Again, that is a section of sanitary sewer that we're proposing to have televised, and that section of sewer does run under one of the school buildings. So I think it's prudent at this point if this project area is being considered, evaluate that condition to verify whether or not we could potentially reroute that around the school. Water main improvements, again, all the water main within the project area would be proposed for replacement. The drainage improvements, similarly, replacing what's existing, but one item that I did want to point out is that 10th and Candy Ojai intersection. That is a problematic intersection in terms of storm sewer for the city. So we have identified some additional inlets there. And then the storm sewer being proposed through the design process would be sized appropriately to help reduce some of that impact during large rain events at that intersection. Certainly don't want anyone to think that it's going to solve all the problems, but based on our preliminary look at this, I think that we will definitely be able to improve that by increasing some pipe sizes in that area and adding inlets. Rice Avenue typical section, again, this is one of the wider street sections that are proposed as part of the report. It's 40 feet wide, and we determined that width as staff reviewed it based on vehicles, not only and vehicle and bus interaction in that area. It's definitely a high traffic area in terms of school traffic. Irene, Augusta, and Mary, sanitary sewer improvements are identified there on the screen. Again, the existing sanitary sewer is proposed to be replaced as part of the improvement. Similarly with the water main, and then also some drainage improvements, which do include adding some inlets or catch basins to pick up some of those project areas where water seems to sit during large rain events. As I mentioned previously, those streets are proposed at 32 feet in width. Moving on to the overlay areas, this map in front of you identifies again the blue areas, which are proposed to be mill and overlay, the yellow areas that have more significant pavement failures, which we've identified as reclaim and repave areas. The green, again, as I mentioned, are the areas that previously had work completed within them. Thanks, Gary. Previously completed within them, and we've identified those as maintenance, both seal coating, crack filling, things of that nature, not a mill and overlay, not a reconstruct. The area in red, Sunrise Path. That path is definitely in need of reconstruction, and then along with the Sunrise parking lot area. Overlay, this is just a section. Obviously the street widths vary up in that area as well, but what we'd be looking at is removing 1.5 inches of bituminous and then replacing that bituminous in the mill and overlay areas. The reclaim and overlay areas is essentially a machine grinds up the bituminous along with the gravel. We're suggesting that approximately 4 inches be removed from the reclaimed material and then 4 inches repaved to help improve that base of that roadway. Block 22 parking lot. This is a parking lot near Frida's Cafe, as you can see on the screen. This parking lot would be a complete reconstruction, some concrete sidewalk spot repairs. There's a hydrant in that parking lot that is in need of replacement, and then some catch basins that need to be adjusted. This we covered already, but essentially is a blown up view of the Sunrise Path and parking lot improvements. This 19th Avenue path is a path that's been identified in a CIP previously. There's been funding applications submitted for it as well. And as we get into the cost summary here, we're suggesting again that we continue to pursue funding for this path improvement, which is ultimately contemplated as a conversion from a 5-foot concrete walk to a 10-foot wide bituminous path. There is a funding program that's out right now through the Minnesota Department of Transportation that you will likely see a resolution at your next meeting for application for funds for that improvement. Estimated project costs are broken down there by project area. Again, just as a reminder, Gorton Avenue is planned to be a reconstruction project, 13th and Grace, also reconstruction, and then Irene, Augusta, and Mary are contemplated as reconstruction projects. The 23rd Street Southeast area improvements are the mill and overlay and the reclaiming of those streets that we've gone through. And then the parking lots and paths costs are broken down there. So you can see each of the project areas and what the anticipated costs associated with them are. In total, the total estimated project cost is approximately $20.95 million. This is a further breakdown. You'll see how that 20 plus million is broken down. Street reconstruction is approximately half of that, or 9.44. Storm sewer around 2.6. Sanitary similarly 2.69. The water main around 3.8. Mill and overlay 1.5, and then the parking lots approximately $830,000. This chart further breaks that down, and it splits each project area down by street, sewer, storm sewer, water main costs associated with the utilities, water main costs attributable to the city. And those cost splits are based on the existing agreement in place relative to water main costs. Then the parking lots and mill and overlays are in their own separate column there. Funding sources that have been contemplated for this, we have assessments, state aid participation, as I mentioned, municipal utilities, wastewater funds, local option sales tax, and again, just to remind council, the direction that was provided during the last projects is only for new storm sewer, not for replacement of existing storm sewer associated with those local option sales tax monies. And of course, city funds and the state funds that I mentioned, that would be applicable to the trail improvements project. Funding sources, we've broke down based on all those project areas. We've identified approximately, for the total $20+ million project, approximately 5.6 in assessments, 1.4 for state aid, 3.1 for municipal utilities, 2.6 for wastewater. Lost is approximately $333,000, and then the city total there would then be $7.8 million. Getting into the assessments a little bit, the assessments that have been identified there for the street reconstruction, you'll note the ranges there. These ranges are similar to the costs identified at the last public hearing and council adopted assessment roll for the 2022 improvements. The ranges provided there are slightly higher, but ultimately those can be finalized once the bids are in hand, as these are based on preliminary engineering estimates. And in terms of what does that really mean? So, for example, a reconstruction project that was approved on the final assessment roll in 2022 is approximately $105 a foot. This range that's been provided here is $100 to $119. So that kind of gives you an idea of the magnitude that we're talking about. Very similar costs associated with those. Similarly with the mill and overlay, that was approximately $56 a foot in 2022. This range, 57 to 63. So I think that we can be relatively comfortable with those estimated assessment ranges. Project schedule, we'll note that we're approximately a month ahead of schedule from last year, so that's a good thing. I know that's one question that comes up occasionally. So what we're recommending is that an open house be held for all of the residents within the project areas on December 12th. We're suggesting that be held at the fire hall on December 12th. That would allow council to conduct the improvement hearing on the December 19th meeting. The open house that we've identified for February, that would be at a point when the plans are essentially complete, which would identify all of the trees that are going to be removed, where the sidewalk will be. Some of the questions that came up during construction this year as another opportunity for residents to come in and view the project areas, whichever those are that council decides to move forward with. Identified the bid opening in March and then receiving the bids in April. Still providing for a May construction start date, which I believe is important and vital to the timely completion. We've identified substantial completion again in October, and then that construction complete date of June of 2024. If council recalls, that would be when the final layer of asphalt would go on the majority of the street projects. And so with that, I know I've been talking for a while. There's a lot of components associated with this project, and I'm going to stand for any questions that council might have.
Councilmember Davis.
I'm curious about putting sidewalks in where there aren't any. How does that work if people have gardens or, I don't know, something in their yard that they wouldn't want that?
Good question. So all the sidewalks that are proposed to be installed where they don't exist currently will be within the existing right-of-way. There's adequate city right-of-way there to install those sidewalks. If there are gardens or landscaping within the right-of-way where that sidewalk is proposed, we'll certainly work with the residents and potentially, well, they would be allowed to move it onto their property. But anytime you add sidewalks where they don't exist currently, I think that definitely needs to be a conversation that we have with those individual property owners because, again, it hasn't been there, but from what we're seeing based on pedestrian volumes and as we reviewed it as staff, we believe them to be important connections. Ultimately, that'll be up to council, but based on the input of the residents, but that's what's being recommended as part of this process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Butterfield, followed by Councilmember Osk.
On the Sunrise parking lot
Yes.
reconstruction, are we looking at adding to that? Because I know that was a big concern there for a while for the park board, and myself and other council members just met with some people there, and they want that increased very, very much.
Yeah, so currently the improvement is proposed. We were aware of that. We considered some additions, but we haven't fully laid that out exactly yet. So the improvement as it exists in the report is to remove and replace what's there. And we did add a little bit of additional parking there. I don't remember how many stalls or square feet it was, but that's definitely something that'll need to be fleshed out during the final design.
Yeah, I think it needs to be increased there from the concerns over there.
Councilmember Osk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions. One about additional sidewalks. You had mentioned one of the areas you were looking at doing that was Rice. And you had mentioned both kind of for proposed pedestrian safety and with the school safety issues there too with school children walking on those. Wondering about 23rd Street, since you're doing some work over there. There's no sidewalk on 23rd. You see a lot of Lakeland students walk home going northbound there on 23rd. And Councilmember Butterfield just brought up, we've had safety concerns proposed, in that area in the past. Is that an area that could be considered for an additional sidewalk?
Short answer, yes. It hasn't been right now, but it's definitely something that we could look at. With the nature of the improvement in that area, and you're referring to the east side, 23rd Street area, with the nature of that improvement, that's also something that could be done after the project or as part of the project. Ultimately, the contractors that we're going to primarily have in a mill and overlay project area our bituminous contractors. There will be some spot curb replacement. So in summary, those improvements could be included in either the mill and overlay component, or they could be done subsequent to the improvement as well. But certainly if there are suggestions, staff can take a look at that and make recommendations. But if there are specific suggestions, please let us know, and we'll definitely look at those. The other important thing is you hear from residents related to any of the improvements. They'll all be getting a mailing about the open house and public hearing. Currently, what we've contemplated as staff is sending notices to all the improvement areas, regardless of which ones council moves forward with, because we do have the information that we can start having those discussions. If a piece or a portion of these projects are delayed to another year, at least they're aware that it's being contemplated and being discussed. So that's the way we've currently set it up, so that everybody gets notified in a timely manner.
Second question then, for the Sunrise Path, is that something where you assess property, people who have property that borders that path, is that something they'd be assessed for?
Historically, path improvements have not been assessed within the city, so no.
Thank you.
Councilmember Plowman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a big one, so thank you for the report. Well, this mayor's office and this council has been trying to tackle these projects and address these projects for a number of years now, and trying to make as much headway as what we can, because we know what we face here in town, and especially the more time you've been here, the more you know the challenge that is. So in saying that, I have a few things. First of all, I think this report is very comprehensive. It's very detailed and it's very helpful. And I think it's not only helpful for next year's projects, but it helps create that, road map. Excuse the pun, but that's my dad joke. Hi, kids. But yeah, I think it helps plan this out, and this is what we need as a city, in my opinion. We're talking a lot of money. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, but that's what it's going to take, and that's what our residents are expecting and demanding, actually. And so I'm super pleased to not just see a single map with some colored lines on it. Rather, we have multiple maps with very detailed lines, and we have layouts and design cross sections. We can see where individual catch basins are going to be placed. We can see where the water mains are going to be. We can see the drainage details. This is about as much detail as we can get ahead of time. So with that said, I also think it's incumbent on us then to reach out to our constituents and talk to our community and tell them, here's this information. This report has been put together. I imagine it took more than just a couple people to put this together in a couple hours. This is a pretty elaborate thing. So there should be no surprises come next year. Now, I know there will be, because that's the nature of government, but there's ample time now for people to look at this, to see what's going to happen, to plan for this, to ask questions, to show up if they're not happy about something, to show up and say what they're not happy about. If they're curious about how this is going to work or how that's going to work, whatever, we have an opportunity to have that dialogue. And I'm hoping that dialogue takes place, and I'm hoping that the city, and I assume that we will, because we've been doing a great job of doing it, puts that information out there to the public, so that, when it is time for the public to have that opportunity to weigh in on these projects, they do turn out. Because the time to be having the conversation about whether or not this should happen this way or that way or the other way should not be after the work is 75% done. Because that just makes it super, super difficult. So this is my plea to the community and anyone and everyone involved, as well as city staff and our engineering consultants and everything. Take part in the process. It's super important. This is the opportunity to do it. Okay, with that said, I I appreciate you touching on a couple of the other areas of concern. So I just want to also advocate for them, the Voss Park drainage area. That is an area that we know is going to continue to cause us problems because we have a basin that essentially does nothing currently. And if there's any way that can be found to leverage those local option sales tax dollars, during this time is the time to do it. If that street's going to be torn up and if other improvements are going to be taking place rather, I think this is the opportunity to get in there and do something done. And then also I want to advocate for the around the Gorton Avenue area around the West Central Steel. I believe that the collaboration with West Central Steel the last time on 19th Northwest, I believe that was an excellent opportunity for the city to partner with a super valuable city commercial entity. Very appreciative that they were willing to come to the bargaining table and do that. They're valuable to our community. And the way that they were willing to partner with us and actually put in a super high quality roadway service, I think is going to serve both their company and the residents and people transitioning back and forth through there. And so I would just advocate continued talks for the northerly edge because I think the results of doing something similar could be just as positive. Net result could be great. So again, I appreciate the comprehensiveness, if that's even a word, of this report. I hope the entire council does because I think this really gives us the opportunity to not only take on next year's project, but then also the timeline for the future so that these don't have to jump up as surprises to us, but we can plan and future councils and mayors can plan moving forward and the community as well. Because again, when we add these up year after year, we're going to get into the hundreds of millions of dollars. There's no way around it. So with it being that important, people should be taking part. So, thank you.
Councilman Fairley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Jared, for giving us a great report. I'm probably one that's been on your butt a few times with criticism, so I like this. Just a couple of questions. If people have sprinkler systems in their yard, in the boulevard where sidewalks go, that will be their expense to replace it.
Yeah, so historically, any improvements within the right-of-way, through the communication process, it's been the city's policy that the residents can remove them outside of the right-of-way so that when the work is going on, they're not destroyed or damaged. And then following the improvement, sidewalks are a little bit different, but in areas where there isn't sidewalk, provided that it's only a sprinkler system and not a big obstruction, those historically have been allowed to go back into the right-of-way. But in the areas of sidewalks, I know there have been a couple areas where there's been sleeves installed underneath the sidewalk so they could still sprinkle the boulevard area. The final design obviously hasn't been done, but that's been past practice, that residents get them out of the way, put them back when they're done, when the project's done.
And I agree with Councilmember Butterfield and Pastor Osk. 23rd Street does need a sidewalk somewhere because of the little kids going to school. Public Works did get a street or a playground sign out there, and hopefully that helps. And then another issue on Sunrise Park, the parking lot, what exactly needs to be done there? It's a small one.
Mm-hmm.
And usually if there's a baseball game there, there's only 2 or 3 cars that park in there. Everyone else is on the street because it's too close to the ball field and foul balls will come. Even though there's trees there, foul balls will hit the cars. So, it was proposed to have more parking south of it. That's just a green space, but a lot of new trees there. But what exactly has to be done with the existing parking lot then?
Yeah, so the existing is proposed to be completely reconstructed, new surface, new full reconstruction, similar to the parking lots that we've done this year. Sounds like it would be prudent for all staff to get together again and maybe talk to the Parks and Rec director and maybe have that floated past the Parks Department again, or the park board again, just to make sure that everybody's needs are being met. So we can look into that further. That's helpful.
And it's great that the walking path is gonna be done, because the neighbors are complaining about that. And then another issue on the overlay, you won't be putting sump pump discharge pipes in. That's only in new construction.
Yeah, unfortunately, in order to really get the value that the drain tile provides, some communities in the past have tried putting drain tile in front of the curb. I would definitely not recommend that, because that just leads to a hump in front of the curb, and our snowplows can't even plow it. Unfortunately, you're correct. Reconstruction projects will have those drain tiles and sump pump connections. The mill and overlays will not.
Because on 24th Street, there's a few houses south that send the water down north. That's where the issues are coming from for deteriorating the streets. But hopefully a new overlay will help for 15 years or so. But thank you for a great job.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Was going to comment about on 23rd Street also about the need to come up with some more connections to get across from the school, et cetera, with that. But I just wanted to compliment what I'm hearing you talk about is making connections and from the ones to the other, and even some of the new sidewalks to provide additional safety and a way to do that. So I appreciate that. I know we've got some bad connections in various places that are going to be difficult to deal with, but I think we've heard loud and clear from residents too that the paths and the safety are important. And so thank you for your efforts, and we'll keep working on it, I hope. Come up with some other suggestions. So thank you.
Some comments from council. Jared, this is exactly what we've been asking for. We've been asking for this for a number of years, similar to what Councilmember Plowman stated. It's a very comprehensive report. It's a very thorough report. It clearly identifies the needs, the weaknesses, strengths, and then the opportunities to improve. And I as well want to challenge future mayors and councils to continue to work towards this type of a solution for our community. So this is really good work. This is really heavy lifting. And I know you've put a lot of work into it. So, and not only do I know that, but I can see it. I can put my hands on it. I can see it. Council, I have a little concern here. If we're going to have this meeting at the fire station, I'm not sure we have enough room. And I really think we should consider, if staff would be okay with it, of maybe moving it out to our new event center. And so maybe, I don't know if council's in agreement with that, we move it out to the event center. I don't want this to be so tight that our citizenry cannot get around and really kick the tires and ask the questions. So Leslie, can you work with your staff and see if we can make that happen?
Yes, we sure will.
Okay, thank you. Then I want to talk about the Gorton Avenue piece. Have we been able to televise that piece that goes underneath West Central Steel, or have we attempted to televise that?
It has not been at this point, no.
Okay. And again, I mean, you know, the waterworks, you know, code does not really say we should be doing that at all. So I like the two areas where you're talking about pulling that out, so that not only are we code compliant, but I know for years we've been trying to get that televised to just find out where that blockage is and why that water is not flowing. Similar again to what Councilman Plowman said with Foss Park, and so we make improvements. That's a really good thing. On the 10th and Candio High piece, when we had the tour with the local option sales tax, and I think you might have been on the bus, I don't recall if you were or not. I thought you were. There was conversation about maybe using Garfield as a holding spot. So by adding these additional catch basins, will that allow us, if future councils decide to try to put that holding area in there on a temporary basis, would that allow that water to move to the north, or would it still have to follow through the south?
Currently, the way the city's storm sewer network is set up in that area, it all flows south and then to the east. But the ponding improvements will also help because of the reduction in the impact to that existing storm network, right? So a pond will provide a little bounce, is what we refer to it as, so that not all that water is trying to get to the same place at the same time. There's an area where that water can be stored until it can drain out. So the improvements here definitely want to be coordinated with the Garfield area as well. So it won't impede that future improvement.
So the concern is that if that water's flowing south, then we have to change the direction. So are you saying that we're gonna try to capture that water from the north then to put into that pond? Or are you saying that we will gather that water there, change the direction and move it back to the north?
Yeah, so what we're suggesting, and staff will be bringing additional information about the Voss, the Garfield, the Trot Avenue locations to a future meeting. But what we're suggesting is taking the drainage area that currently all tries to get through a pipe on the north side, collecting that so it has a area to bounce so that all the downstream water can drain out. And then as that drains out, the water from the north where that pond would be can flow into those pipes, essentially at a slower rate so that intersection doesn't serve as the pond, rather the pond serves as the pond.
Okay, and so the way you're designing it, because when we look at that, I mean, we see that you're adding a lot of catch basins there. Or that's the way it appears.
Yeah, and as part of the final design process, that will all be modeled and tied to the city's existing storm sewer model. So we'll be able to see what the benefit of all of this will be. So, yep.
Okay, and then on Rice Avenue, you talked about the Rice Avenue piece, and again, that's where, I can't remember if you said that was a sanitary or is that a storm that goes under that existing building, the school building?
Storm.
That's a storm.
Yeah.
So then you'd be proposing then that would be coming out from underneath the building and moving that around? I didn't really follow that conversation.
Yeah, so we're proposing that be televised so we know what condition it's in. And if it is to be replaced, obviously we would replace it around the building and not maintain it in its spot. I'm not sure how it came into being, what the factors might have been back in the time when it was installed or when the school was built, but I think there's some more analysis that needs to happen in terms of the pipe condition and what we really want to do to improve that. There's other trenchless technologies that are possible to improve that pipe condition if need be too. So it's something that we did not take a real deep dive into with the preliminary report, but it is something that there will be a significant dive during the design process.
Okay, additional comments or questions from council? We have a motion that's been made and seconded to adopt the resolution receiving the report and ordering an improvement hearing for December 19th. Roll call.
Councilmember Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Bagerly,
Aye.
Osmus.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Thank you, Jared, for your hard work. And I know, Gary, I know you put a lot of work into this as well in conversations you and I have had in the past. And thank you for that. And Leslie, thank you for your leadership in making this happen. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. We know that. So thanks for your leadership. Really do appreciate it. Next, we'll consider an approval for a contract with David Drone and Associates for job classification and scoring. Luann, or Ms. Sietzema,
Ms.
our
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you for hearing me tonight. As you remember, a while back, I came to you and asked to be able to send out some requests for proposals for a job classification study and scoring. And we sent that out. We received 5 proposals. And Leslie Valiant, the city administrator, and Kyle Boxer, operations director, and I met and went through all of the proposals and kind of laid out, there's some information there for you as a matrix that we laid out just to figure out who best provided what we were looking for out of that with this project, and we came up with David Drown and Associates. The cost of the proposal that they sent us would be no more than $30,000, and that's just because they're going to review all of our current job descriptions, and if there's need to improve or revise or update, there's room in that to do that, not necessarily starting all the way over from scratch. So, and then also going through and scoring all of those. So I would like to contract with them, and I'm asking for a resolution to approve that tonight.
Council?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve a contract with David Drone and Associates for job classification and scoring. Discussion. Roll call.
Councilmember Osk,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Plowman,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Bagerly,
Aye.
Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield.
Aye.
7 ayes, 0 nays.
That resolution passes. Thank you,
Thank you.
Ms. Sietsema. Ms. Sietsema, our Human Resources Coordinator, Director. Next on the agenda as well, to consider an approval of a new Facilities Coordinator job description for the Park and Recs Department.
Bringing up Rob to this is a position that, and we've talked to you a little bit about with the improvements that have been made out at the event center and, the square footage and just the massive update and what needs to be taken care of and the events that are going to be planned there and all of the scheduling for all the programming that they do. This is a position that we're interested in filling. So you have a copy of our draft job description there, and we're just looking for approval to recruit for that position. You want to say anything?
Mayor, member of the councils, when we look at this, it kind of goes back to when we first created our department. It was a little bit of a hybrid with the two coordinator positions and with myself being kind of acting as the arena manager still. And this was before we had the Invest in Willmar projects. So now with the Invest in Willmar projects being completed, our footprint of our facilities have increased dramatically, and so will the usage of it. We're kind of a little bit unique because of our Park and Rec department is actually located at our ice arena, which many of them are not. They're standalone facilities, so they have their own person there that takes control of it. So we're asking this facility coordinator to be able to do all of our ice scheduling with the concession stand, Zamboni driver, net pullers and everything, and the drive floor events, but also have them still coordinate all the Robbins Island shelter and the events out at Robbins Island and all the ball field scheduling as well. So I've been in that position before when I was with the school, and it's a big task to be able to keep everything coordinated and making sure that the public's needs are there and met.
Okay,
Motion to approve the job description for facilities coordinator.
Second.
motion made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. There still isn't a pay range listed on here.
Yep. So that we did I did an initial job scoring for that just to see where that would fall. And it would be a grade 7 between 56,680 and 78,104 annually, depending on the person that we can find for that position.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't include it in your packet.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Rob, when we hired you, you were supposed to be rec director and arena manager.
Yes.
I was on the hiring committee.
Yep.
So what exactly are you going to be doing now then, if we hire this person? Because it looks like a lot of it should be what a director should be doing.
This person's doing the day-to-day stuff. So they're scheduling all the employees, making sure the events are set up correctly. I'm still overseeing the big, like, capital improvement projects or any other rooftop units that are going out. I still deal with those type of things, the big purchases.
See, when we had a rec department, park and rec before, there wasn't enough work for the recreation director, and we made him public works director too. So he was rec director and public works director. And then he decided to retire, and that's why we went to community ed. I can't believe that you're as busy as what he was when he was public works director and park and rec director. So I don't get it.
I wasn't there when Dale was around, so I can't comment on that.
Well, now I heard you lost the supervisor. Was that Friday or today?
No, we didn't lose a supervisor, we lost a recreation coordinator.
coordinator?
Yeah, Alex Sobiak.
Because I think if you lose a person, I think you need to reorganize and establish some things. Because I don't see a community center director should be running the swimming pool and the bike program.
Now, some of this will change as well, that our staff is going to be taking care of the pool with the recreation coordinators. They're going to be taking over the pool aspects of it and the bikes.
Okay, because before we went with community ed, I lost my train of thought. The Y, they were gonna do the pool.
Right,
We
yes.
went with community ed, and we threw them under the bus and said, forget it. So now we have competition, having two places looking for lifeguards, where if they were running the pool, they would hire all the lifeguards. So we weren't supposed to be competing, with the Y. And we are with some flag football that they're trying to start again because we kind of took it away from them. Basketball, they're starting to get back into that because, well, you guys really didn't take it away. You never really had a program. So I don't know, it's just, as a person with a recreation degree in community education and municipal emphasis, I see it as a disaster, and I was hoping it was gonna be something good. And I don't see that. I hear people, they're wondering, well, where's Rob? We got programs going out at the Civic Center, hockey, no one sees you there. Are you there during games?
I'm there at times, yeah, I'm not,
At times, okay, all right. So, yeah, I don't think we need this position right now. I said before, we need to hire some more maintenance people for public works. I'd rather see a couple of employees there, so.
Councilmember Plowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I get around the country and I work with an awful lot of park and rec departments because and school districts and whatnot, because we build athletic fields. So in doing that, I'm seeing literally thousands of park and rec departments, as well as their staff. And what I will say that I know just from observation is that number one, facilities are improving, but they're also getting more complicated. Facilities are getting more expensive to operate, and facilities are getting more costly to replace. As we can see, and as we're all well aware, we spent millions of dollars building these fantastic facilities that we now have brand new, really nice facilities that now this next year is going to be super cool. Even this past season, we were able to see the usage of them, but as the turf grows in, the natural turf, now we have synthetic turf surfaces, which a lot of communities had before us, and we're now caught up to that. But we also got to make sure that we take care of the stuff that we have, and we've seen the cost for some of our other city facilities. What happens when we don't continue that deferred maintenance and continue those maintenance programs? And I believe that something like this, I can see the necessity for it, because I understand there's kind of a multi-pronged thing going on here when it comes to programming, departmental programming, but then also the department and what the department head has to oversee is much more than just programming. It's facilities and maintenance and machinery sometimes, and HVAC systems and scheduling of employees and management of employees and the oversight of employees. I don't see it as an area to cut corners after you spend millions of dollars on shiny new stuff. That seems to me like buying a new truck and not changing the oil. So in my mind, I see this as taking care of what we have, and we've expanded on what we have, so it's going to take more man hours and more more labor, more oversight to care for. So I think that's the prudent thing to do. Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson, followed by Osmus.
When you presented this to us at our work session, there was a layout. With losing one staff, do you see anything you want to change with that? And could you just walk through your hierarchy of, if you add this position, who does what, with that a little bit to help us appreciate the need for this position? Is that a good way to say it? Because you have, I'm going to let you just describe the people who work for you.
It'd be myself as the director, then below me, but it would be the community city manager, which is Britta, and the 2 recreation coordinators and the facility coordinator, all on the same length. And then underneath that, Jeremy and John, who are our arena maintenance guys, fall under my supervision still. But they're multitasked now because they're taking care of the ball fields and the turf and the new event center as well.
So go through the 3 coordinators with what their functions actually are for us.
As it stands right now, like the community center, Britta takes care of the community center along with bikes and the pool. And
But you're talking about changing that. I was talking about the other side. The
future?
You have.
Oh, and so then we have the coordinator's position, which would be adult rec, the pool, bikes, special needs programs, and special events. And then we have a youth rec coordinator. That's when we discussed it at the staff level with our department. And we all felt like that would be the fits, that would be more ideal for everybody. And then we vetted it out for at least 4 to 5 months at the department head level. And I'll say it too, like with Jeremy and John, with how much use is at Robbins Island, they're the ones that are going down there to clearing out the 4-season shelter and Gurry to help alleviate some of the work that has to be done with the public works staff on the weekends. And then we also had the cleaning crew now that we've gone to that eliminates the public works staff having to come on the weekends, and that's all coordinated through this facility coordinator. So we have eliminated some of the duties from the public works staff so they can still work on more of the projects that pertain to them.
Councilmember Osmus.
Okay. I guess I would go back to when the split happened with community ed and rec. And I feel like when you took over in that position, your plate was full, because then you also took on the civic center manager, and you were going to juggle both to see then where the needs might be. Then we threw on the local option sales tax projects, which was a massive undertaking that you had to have with Swanson Field and the event center and the ball fields and Robbins Island. And I feel like you have carried the water for 2 to 3 years. And now it's kind of filtering out. And now we can start to see where the rec and the programming is going and where the needs are going to be, and especially with the new event center facility. And I think this position is needed. And I think it's a good allocation and balance of the responsibilities. I'm in favor of this position.
Additional comments or questions? Oh, Councilmember Osk.
Thank you. Can you explain to me something you've indicated earlier, that Jeremy and John would still report to you, you'd be the supervisor there. But when you kind of like explained that that org chart to us, that it seems that this position, the facilities coordinator, falls in between you and those 2 staff people. Why would they not be the supervisor?
Well, with me being out on site, we don't need to have frontline supervisors. What these positions used to be back when Councilman Frager was saying, the recreation coordinators were supervisors at that time. So with me being out there, I can supervise Jeremy and John. So these do not have to be supervised positions.
Okay.
So it helps us to keep it in that coordinator's position
Okay,
instead of supervisors.
that makes sense. So there's no one they'd be supervising then? The facilities coordinator would not be a supervisor for any
No,
employee,
just part-time help.
part-time folks.
Part-time staff.
Correct.
Councilmember Butterfield.
Well, some concerns that Plowman brought up and Fagerly brought up with the maintenance, with us having an increase, wouldn't it be better for us to hire more maintenance right now? So we're not letting this $10 million building deteriorate farther?
I don't question that. We need to have more maintenance staff as well, all the way around. But right now, when we vented it out, we felt like this is the first step of doing this, to gain the facility coordinator in place.
There's a maintenance position in next year's budget.
half this year. We have, the budget for 2023 has this full-time facilitators coordinator coming on early this year with the maintenance staff coming in later this year. So you'll see that come in May because we want to see how this all actually works out first. There's still, because
So we're
the
just gonna run a
facility,
test on it for
the maintenance
2,000?
the maintenance people don't have to come on staff until we get a lot more busier in the summertime.
What was your comment?
So we're running a test for a position for $80,000 before
This
we're
isn't
gonna
a
hire maintenance?
test.
Well,
This
that's what you
isn't,
said.
no. I'm saying the maintenance, we're working on the maintenance side so that and besides that, the maintenance doesn't need to come into play full-time, another maintenance position until summertime when we are busier. Right now, the maintenance people we have can be able to maintain what we have.
Additional comments or questions? Rob, I have a few questions. Under community ed and rec, how many employees did the city have?
Back, if I remember correctly, they had like Dave and Lan that were supervisors. And then Becky Sorensen. And then Kevin Matson, who was the arena manager and a half-time or 30-hour a week with what meant as a secretary out there. And then 2 maintenance people.
And what's your current span of control? How many employees are underneath your direct control?
I have the 2 recreation coordinators, the community center manager, and Jeremy and John.
And how many additional square feet of responsibility do we put on your plate once we put on the fields, the Swanson Field, the event center, Robbins Island, and then the ball diamonds out at the Civic Center?
The event center is 25,000 square feet that was added on. The 2 turf fields are 90,000 and 93,000 square feet. And then just the upgrades that we've had at Robbins Island, our shelter rentals we're close to $450 now a year. So, I mean, we've just been busy.
Okay. I'm going to ask our fire chief a question because you're our emergency management coordinator, correct?
That's correct.
What's the span of control that each supervisor is supposed to have?
Between 5 and 7.
Okay. So when we take a look at your span of control, when we take a look at your added job responsibilities, and similar to what Councilmember Osmus said, when you were hired, you were told that we were going to hire a recreation director, and then I believe, if memory serves me correctly, we were going to have an arena manager as well. And you agreed to accept the responsibility of both tasks. Is that correct?
Well, to a point, when we were, when we looked at this position, the city administrator at that time said, you get 2 people and you make it work. And so at that time, then I said, to get it going with the recreation coordinators, I would still act as the arena manager because I was the arena manager for 4 years prior to that. So then I could keep things going afloat out there. So I kept those duties going, but some of that recreation coordinator was doing the day-to-day task, as well as scheduling the Zamboni drivers, the concession stand workers, and everything like that.
In your 40-hour work week, that you have, how many hours a week do you have to sit, to forecast and plan in future goal set for your organization?
I don't know if I can give you an honest answer with that, with all the Invest in Willmar stuff that has happened the last couple of years. That's been my main focus for the last probably 3 years.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask a question to the city administrator. Isn't that why you said we should have this position? I mean, we've added all this added responsibility onto your shoulders, and we haven't given you the people to do it. And what we're doing is we're asking to give you the people to do the work you have to do. And at the end of the day, and Leslie will tell you, I pushed back pretty hard on this position until she sat down and explained all this to me. And all these questions that I just asked are all things Leslie told me about before, so I knew the answers to these questions I was asking. The only one I didn't know the answer, and I was pretty sure I was right, was the one I asked the fire chief. But, you know, if we're going to have a recreation program that is going to work and it's going to function the way it should function, we need people to do it. And so thank you for bringing this request forward. Council, any additional questions you have? Councilmember Davis.
I want to say thank you to Mayor Calvin for the questions that you asked, because it answered questions I had.
Additional comments or questions? Rick, Councilmember Bagley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to disagree with you, Mr. Mayor. So you put out the pamphlet and you show everything that you do. So what do you do for wrestling other than registration?
We hire the coaches and we conduct the practices at the high school.
You don't do that.
Our coaches
Wrestling
do.
Association does that.
They do not do that, Mr. Fagerly. They
Yes,
do not
they
do
do.
that.
Yes, they do.
They are part-time employees of ours.
Well, you have no control over their matches. You don't hire the refs. You don't keep standing.
Councilmember Fagerly, that we have an agreement with the Takedown Club that they run the wrestling tournament.
Motion to call a question.
Motion been made to call a question. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I had 2-5. Roll call.
Councilmember Davis,
To call a question. Motion to call a question.
To vote on.
To go.
Yes or no?
No.
Plowman,
Yes. Aye.
Nelson,
No.
Fagerly,
No,
Osmus,
Aye.
Butterfield,
Aye.
Osk.
No.
The 3 ayes, 4 noes.
Councilmember Fagerly, continue.
so what do you do for the basketball program?
We run a spring basketball program because we were told that the YMCA has a basketball program and we're not supposed to compete with them during the same
You
time
just
period.
started that last year.
Yes, and we did it off season, so we did not conflict with them.
Yeah, and how did that go?
We had about 40, 50 kids in it.
Okay. How did it go? You could just go by numbers, or did they actually learn something?
I would have to talk to my coaches about that and the volunteer parents over there.
In the football, I have to admit that was flag football was really good 2 years ago, 2 to 3 years ago. Kind of faltered this year. And what? You don't play double headers in football like you did this year. Kids get worn out pretty quickly at that age. So, just telling you. But if it wouldn't be for these associations, you wouldn't have much of a program.
I disagree.
You know, you always talk to a group by themselves, and then you talk bad about the other group. Like hockey, you'll talk to and say, well, they're doing this with baseball or football. You need to come together with all the associations and clear the air.
And we have done that, Mr. Fagerly. We have an association meeting every year. We
Point
start.
of order. Is this appropriate?
Yeah, it is. We need to clear this program.
council meeting?
Out, yeah, where else? We don't have committee meetings.
I had the first
So
annual.
I suggest you have a,
Mr. Scott?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm sorry.
We take a break.
It's certainly legitimate for the city council to ask whatever questions it needs to ask to determine the need for this position. That's the recommendation coming before you. But my caution to the council is that this cannot be you cannot be discussing personnel performance of any specific employee. So I would just urge every question, every comment to be geared toward the issue of whether this position is necessary to be added. That's the question before the council.
Councilmember Nelson?
I'd just like to request a 5-minute or 10-minute break.
We're in recess. We're out of recess. Ms. Sietsema, so we have a position that is being requested from your department to consider a new facilities coordinator job description for the Parks and Recreation Department. And so my understanding is with the approval of this, then that you would move that position forward to filling that position.
Yep, we would start recruiting, yep. And
Sorry?
we would start recruiting and then with a hire potentially like in January is what we were anticipating, so.
Okay. Additional questions or comments to the job description as it's presented in front of you? Councilmember Nelson. I wrote you down, so I don't know if I went to you or not.
That was
so.
before we tabled, but that's
Okay.
fine. No, I will make a comment. I'm struggling a little with, I don't think we can add new facilities and not recognize that we don't have to change how our staffing is. I think what I'm concerned about is there's a mixed message here with what that should be. However, I know there's been work done laying it out, and I think losing another position right now complicates it a little bit with how those components lay out. And so I'm supportive of the fact that we need to change our staffing. And I guess the question is, are you still committed that this is the right, if what we're hearing, is this the right position for us to be adding at this time? Or what do we do with the other position that's open right now? Do we wait then on that, or how do they fit together?
No, so Leslie Valiant, Kyle Box, Gary Manzer, and Rob Baumgarn and myself met multiple times just about these issues. For several months, we've been talking about it, about what the projected staffing needs would be for the Park and Rec once the event center was done, once the ball fields were all done. And this is the position that we boiled it down to, and also another Parks and Rec, or another Public Works maintenance person. So those were the two things that we need. So right now, the position, the person that left, Alex Sobiak, we are already recruiting to fill her position because she took care of all of the youth rec. And she, in her exit interview with me just recently, she told me that she had over 250 kids involved in the football sessions that she just completed. They took in over $25,000. I mean, that's just a snippet of one program, and it's just going to grow from there. I have a feeling because the facilities have been upgraded and are better, and that's what we were looking at, is projecting forward when we were trying to decide what are the needs going to be out there. So I think we're very much in line. This isn't just something that Rob is just asking for. This is something that all of us as a team talked about and got together and looked at all the information and decided that this is what we needed to do to move forward.
It still, to me, feels very much like a work in progress, and if we support doing this, I think you need to help bring us along with the changes that are going to happen out there and the events that are going to take place, and how do we do this and best utilize staff in the different locations.
Right, yep, and we will. We can bring you, if it's numbers that you want, if you want to see the programming changes that are happening, because we now have these facilities, I'm sure the team will bring that forward to you, so.
Councilman Butterfield.
At our work session meeting about a month ago when we brought this up, this was going to be non-supervisory position, correct?
Correct.
Is it still?
Yes, it's not, it only supervises part-time staff, but all of the rec coordinators do.
Okay, but we have it in here, trains employees, prepares, monitors budgets. Isn't that something a supervisor should do?
If they all work together on the budgets and the needs for their programs that they're running, so it's going to be working alongside with the rest of the team, yes. But they're training their own part-time staff, they're training drivers for the Zamboni, they're training people that are going to be doing coaching, that type of stuff. They make sure that we have everybody on the same page.
Additional comments or questions? So motion has been made, that motion has been seconded to approve the job description for the position of facilities maintenance coordinator. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed,
Aye.
Aye.
that motion passes. Next, we have considered an introduction of an ordinance regulating the removal of snow, ice, dirt, and rubbish from public sidewalks and private streets. Mr. Box, our operations director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council. This is an introduction of an ordinance to amend the current ordinance already in the books for the city of Willmar. This is a more proactive approach for the city than what past practice has been. Past practice, current practice right now for the Public Works Department, specifically talking about snow and ice removal on public sidewalks, is right now, those are monitored or brought in by a complaint basis. Letters are sent to the affected property owners, the property owners in violation. 7 days go by, and then city staff or contracted service would then go in and abate that snow. And then the assessment abatement hearings would happen later in the year. So the largest change that we're proposing to be amended is to remove that waiting period. 24 hours, what we'd be proposing, 24 hours after snow or ice, in this case, dirt or rubbish has ceased to fall or has been deposited. It needs to be removed from the public sidewalk, from the public sidewalk. After that 24 hours has passed, then Public Works would then have the ability to go in and remove that hazard. Again, this is just to be more proactive, to clean up sidewalks, to entice property owners to also clean up sidewalks and not have to wait for a letter to come from city staff. And if there are specific questions, I'll maybe ask the Public Works Director to come and discuss if there's specific questions on this current process for removing snow and ice.
But what you're asking for here is to introduce an ordinance, so there'd then be a public hearing at that time.
Correct, yes.
Okay, so we have a request to consider an ordinance introduction regulating the removal of snow, or amending it for the removal of snow, ice, dirt, rubbish from the public sidewalks and private streets.
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Discussion. Councilmember Osk.
I'm looking at, let's see, letter B, where we're suggesting an amendment where we're removing the occupant. Can you tell me the thought behind removing the occupant?
My thought behind removing the word occupant is that you can't assess an occupant if they're a tenant. Typically, those assessments would need to go to the owner of the property. That was my reason for removing the occupant.
Okay. Any thoughts as to why it would have been in there originally?
No.
Okay.
Remember why that was in there?
I wasn't.
Occupant piece.
Which part was it?
It was put in, removing the word occupant.
I don't recall.
It was what, 2008 or 2009? Councilmember Butterfield.
When we discussed this about a month ago or so, I brought up some problem areas in the city that I had concerns with. Did we get a letter out to those people prior to their snowfall yet or not?
I'm not aware of the conversation that you're talking about. Was that you and I that had that?
It was at a work session. I asked for the business owners on 2nd Street Southeast, Southwest, Willmar Avenue, where the middle school kids walk, the sidewalks aren't shoveled. And it's consistent battle year after year after year. And I was advised we were going to get a letter out prior to November.
Okay.
To have them, let them know, hey, you need to clean this up.
Okay.
And I haven't noticed any of them been troubled yet or not.
Okay. I do recall that conversation, yes. Unfortunately, I do not know if letters have been sent out, so we'll follow up immediately.
Okay.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. So just back on B. So with the rental properties, if the owner designates the renter to do this, how does that fit into this verbiage? Is it the people who live there are not responsible to make sure the street is clear?
That very well could be the case. I guess the way I'm looking at this right now is that our issue would not be with the tenant.
Renter, it
would be with the landlord or the property
Okay.
owner. Whatever agreement the landlord and the tenant have for snow removal or what have you, that's between them. Anything between us would be directly to the property.
To the owner.
Yep.
Okay.
I think where that concern came up is that we, in the past, we had owners come saying that the tenant was told to fix it. They were not told about it, and then it was placed against them. And now we're going back a lot of years. The last time that happened. Okay, Councilman Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, just for instance, if it starts snowing Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock, and then it quits, and it's still there Sunday morning, and it's a city path, what happens then?
We still want to be accountable for our own areas.
You'll wait till Monday then?
Again, I can't speak to to what Public Works has done in the past. That's maybe where Gary or the Public Works Director needs to come up and.
Speak to that if you want.
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you're talking about the path by your place, probably?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I would think so. So what happens on a normal snowfall, obviously, paths aren't our number one priority, but we do have a person designated for paths. We have 25 miles of paths and one machine that does paths. We use the other people for parking lots and plow routes. We have everybody out. There are times that we don't have everybody in-house. So then we have to adjust. Sometimes we have to put the paths on the back burner until we get the site or the streets done, and then we take those people and then we put them into the paths. And so we'll put up as many as 5 and 6 people in paths to try to catch up. There are times when that falls on a weekend, and so instead of working on the weekend at paths, we push it off to Monday. And by no means do we enforce somebody's public property within 24 hours of the snow. We've never done that. The ones that we have addressed have been problem ones when it's multiple snowfalls. And for us to go and do every one after 24 hours, there's no way we could do it with the amount of sidewalks in this town. There's no way. So most of our property has been complaint driven. And by the time we go through the process of sending a letter, we could have had 2 more snowfalls on top of that. So what this is offering us is a tool that when we have these problems, we can go do it and get it done without going through that process. And I can honestly tell you that a lot of the areas are the same areas that we deal with time and time again. And I'm sure Mr. Butterfield can attest to that because he's on the streets a lot and he sees what's out there. And I looked today at some sidewalks that, we only got a little bit of snow, but it's the same people that aren't doing their sidewalks. And a lot of them are rental properties that either the people don't take the initiative to do it, or the landlord doesn't have somebody do it unless it's over 2 inches. That's kind of stuff that's going on. So yes, sometimes your path isn't done within that first few hours, but there's a reason for that, and it's a staffing thing. Now, we could stick to it right away and continue and put that on a priority with the street, but I don't think that would be cost productive to the city to do that.
I appreciate that. But someone will ask me, and I have to explain something to them, so.
Yeah, it's always been the city's policy, as long as I've worked there, that paths actually were secondary to any street thing. Streets are number one, and our internal sidewalks are number two. The internal sidewalks become number one as far as plowing them, the city ones. And then beyond that, the paths are out there, and it could be 2 days. And there are paths that we might ignore if we got a lot of wind drifting and stuff, like the radio station, for an example. You could go by there and turn around and go back, and turn around and go back, and turn around and go back, because it's just counterproductive until the storm settles down. So each time it's a little bit different, but I can guarantee you that it's a high priority for us to get those done. It's just a timing issue with what other things we got going on. And then you also got to take into consideration that we might have a downtown snow emergency in there that we have to haul that snow away too.
Additional comments or questions? All in favor of the motion to introduce the ordinance regulating the removal of snow, ice, dirt, rubbish from public sidewalks and private streets, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Next, we have consideration to authorize staff to apply for a Safe Routes to School Boost Grant. Mr. Box.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff were more recently made aware of an opportunity for a small Safe Routes to School Boost Grant up to the amount of $50,000. We're bringing this forward to you tonight for your consideration to be able to submit that grant by November 30th, by the end of the day. So there's a few ideas that we have in the works for this boost grant. This is, again, Safe Routes to School, and it really is geared towards non-infrastructure program, or could be for programming. However, we've identified a few areas where some signage could be placed in close proximity to schools. So that's one of the areas that we'll be looking at for this boost grant to be able to submit next Wednesday.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve staff to apply for safe routes to school. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Very supportive of this. Have you worked with the school at all on this? Because they have done
Yes.
these, the safe routes to school in the past, and so you're working with them right now?
Yes,
on
I
this?
am. Yes, emails and phone calls have been sent out. We have not received anything back at this point. So we're
Great.
we want to work with our local partners with the school in Minnesota as well. I know they've worked on these types of grants in the past too. So we want to make sure we're all inclusive to have all the right partners at the table before we submit this grant.
Very much needed, and if listening to our presentation on streets, et cetera, I wasn't sure if this was crossing over with some of the plans for streets next year.
Hopefully, the legislature has not identified any funding for the larger infrastructure safe routes to school grant for 2023. We're hopeful on that, and that might be the that might account for some of that path reconstruction on the east side of town in 2023, but that'll be yet to come if funding is approved by the legislature.
Thank you.
Just comments or questions? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion does carry. Any community pride announcements from council? Just want to remind Councilmember Fager.
No.
Just gonna say happy Thanksgiving, and I believe the Lights of the World open Thanksgiving evening.
That's
I got
Did you
it.
have-
That's what I was just going to check to see if you were going to say something about that.
Yes.
Is there an open house coming up before the next council meeting for the event center, or? Okay.
Okay, so we have Celebrate the Light of the World, which opens up on Thanksgiving evening at 5 p.m., as Councilmember Fagerly just stated. Also want to give a big shout out to Willmar Fest and the staff there for last weekend, the Holidays Parade downtown. I heard it was a tremendous event and heard a lot of positive comments back on that. So for those people that were involved in that, kudos. I know Gary, your staff was down there doing a bunch of work, and I know the fire department was down there too. I saw the big fire truck all decked out in lights, and thought it looked pretty good with Sparky up on top. So all good stuff. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.